Okay, so rebalancing is allowing your body just to relax. Now, for some students, that's super easy. You lay them on the floor in semi-supine, and they don't have an issue with that at all. They will just lay on the floor and just, relax and release. For other students, that's not the case. They need something to do, and this is where being aware of the learning approaches that your student prefers becomes very relevant to us. So we'll call them the slightly more stressed student, perhaps, where they've got the very busy mind and it's quite difficult for them to just lay, then they need something to do. And this rebalancing protocol gives them something to do with their mind while their body is allowed to just return itself to its rebalanced state. Also, for myself, I was naturally inquisitive when I started to learn probably more the Scaravelli aspects or the Scaravelli approach to yoga. I was very inquisitive and curious. I wanted to know why I felt what I felt, what it meant to feel what I felt. So for me, having these sort of distractions to the mind, if you want to call them that, or just practical things to do while we're laying. Also, as a serial collapser, and of course we know tension is on a scale. We're either screaming tight on one end, or the other end is just systematic collapse, which is me. If you lay me on the floor, I will go to sleep. Which in some ways is okay, but it's not really the awareness that we're looking for here. So this helps to keep your student awake and alert, and also, as I say, gives them something to do while we go through the rebalancing protocol. Also gets them to really develop their interoception and helps them to really get to know their own bodies. So in working with this protocol over the years, I've really learned where my rotations are. I've really learned what's going on for me in my own body. And I know what to look for now when I come down to laying. I know what to get to grips with first and foremost. So we start with just laying on the floor in semi-supine. You can prop your client or your student however you feel, and just allow them to make contact with the ground. Allow them to feel the ground underneath them. And just bringing the awareness to the feet. And all we do here is just notice the heels and the toes. Is one heel heavier than the other? Is one foot heavier than the other? And depending on the mindset of your student, there's 3 cues you can give here. The first one is just to make one foot, the lighter foot, as heavy as the heavy foot. The second cue is to imagine that there's roots coming up out of the ground, wrapping around the foot and pulling the foot down into the ground. And then it becomes as heavy as the heavy side. One of my students has described it as sinking her foot into sand. She feels the gravity coming down through her foot, going into the ground, and her foot feels like it's being sunk into sand. And then both feet are equally heavy. We always want the lighter side to become heavy, because the heavy side is the one that's usually holding on a little bit, particularly with the hips. So the next contact point is the back of the hips. Is one hip heavier on the floor than the other? And again, can we go through and just make that lighter side hip as heavy as the heavy side. Then we look at the smile on the back of the ribs. And can we make the surface area of the back of the ribs equal on both sides? Can we make touch equal across the back of the ribs? And if there's one side that's not so much in contact, can we allow those roots to come up out of the ground, wrap around those ribs and pull them down into the ground? Shoulder blades. We want to have 2 flat plates of the shoulder blades on the ground if possible. Now for most students that's not going to be possible, but that's sort of where we're aiming at. So again, can we imagine those lovely roots coming up out of the ground, wrapping around the shoulder blades and just pulling back down into the ground. And we feel that the collarbones relax, soften and go outwards towards the edges of the shoulders. If you find with your students that now the ribs pop up towards the sky, you can use the palms of the hands just really gently, just the weight of the hands and the out breath can smooth the front of the ribs in towards, so we're going down towards the tummy, down towards the pelvis, and that broadens the smile across the back of the base of the ribs. And that will help with your student feeling that both sides of the ribs are well in contact with the ground now. And then the lovely smile at the back of the head. The jaw softens back, the eyes rest back. And can we make touch equal across the back of the head? So they might find that they're over to one side. So can the ears become heavy equally on both sides and pull us down into the ground? And then if you want to add elbows in, then of course you can. I don't tend to do that. I tend to keep it in my teaching, feet, hips, ribs, shoulders, head. But if the shoulders are particularly sticky, there may be use in the pointy parts of the elbows both becoming heavy into the ground, because that helps. If there's a shoulder that's particularly off the ground, the contact point of the elbow and the pull of the elbow into the ground leads the long arm bone back through the socket and into the spine, into the center of the chest, and then the shoulder will descend back to the floor. And these are processes over time, particularly if it's very tight in the pectoral on the front or very tight in the sternal fascia. This will take time for your student, and this is why spending time laying on the floor but giving your students something to do, particularly if their mind is busy or if they're prone to depression. We don't want to leave them in silence for too long, because that's when, you know, thoughts come in and that might not be useful. So just working with your student, give them something to do, whether that's, you know, might be sinking into sand, might be, I like the roots analogy where, you know, the gravity comes down through us, comes up out of the ground, wraps around us, and then brings us down into the ground. Gives us a great connection to source, gives us a great reconnection back to our environment. We start to reconnect with the earth again. So I hope that's useful. Have a play with it through the week, and we'll check in on the Q&A, and I'm really looking forward to your thoughts on this one. Take care.